Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, it's a fine morning here in Gainesville, Florida. We're hunkered down in the John Martin Talks bunker. We got a great story, a series of stories for you today. But the first one we're going to jump out of the gate is Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi basically says that Trump is too fat to take the corona drug, and we'll expand upon that and talk about Trump's waistline in just a moment. But we got a great opinion piece from Pat Buchanan today. Will Americans allow a second shutdown? Because there's some thoughts that we're going to, I know the Democrats are certainly hoping that we're opening now to our great peril and that we're going to have to shut everything down just before the election in November. And Pat Buchanan has got an opinion on that, and we're going to share it with you. And then Biden, man, he gets honked down. Biden did one of these virtual shows, reality, I suppose. The reality is pretty dismal, to Tampa, to the great city of Tampa, Florida, last week, and to say it was a fiasco is an understatement. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But we start with an article from The Hill. Pelosi says morbidly obese Trump taking hydroxychloroquine, not a good idea. Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Monday that it's not a good idea for President Trump to be taking hydroxychloroquine as a potential treatment for coronavirus. Now, is she afraid it might just work? For those of you who wonder what I'm talking about, well, yesterday, President Trump was doing not really a briefing, but he was talking to a group of restaurant owners, associations and whatnot about opening up and some of the challenges. And during the Q&A part, they did have a little press conference aspect of it. Trump admitted that he has been taking hydroxychloroquine for, he said, a week and a half as a preventative measure in response to the fact that some people close to him at the White House, like his own personal valet, doesn't get much closer than that, I suppose, had tested positive for COVID-19, the coronavirus. So he was taking it preventative. And you would have thought that they announced that the comet was about to hit the planet within the next 24 hours and all life would end, because the media just went off the chain, man. And it was just crazy yesterday afternoon and last night talking about, oh my God, Trump is on the wackadoodle chloroquine drug. I mean, you would have thought he said, yeah, I'm sniffing Lysol myself. I'm huffing a can a day. I mean, it was insane. So that's what this is all about. But I got to tell you, before we get too deep into this, I heard a personal story about this so-called controversial drug, hydroxychloroquine. Now, you may recall this is a drug that was primarily started for the treatment of malaria. And later on, it was tested and tried and is now an acceptable drug for other things like lupus and that type of thing. And there is some speculation and some absolute proof, scientific proof, that in some cases it has helped mitigate the effects of the coronavirus. Now, I want to tell you a very quick story. I'm going to let the people remain anonymous, but one of them is a frequent viewer to the show. Good morning. How you doing? You'll know who you are. But a friend of mine told me about his father-in-law who had contracted COVID-19, coronavirus. And the gentleman that was 91 and is, let me give you the good news, the man is still alive. He's 91 years old. So that puts him square in the center of those who are more susceptible to dying from this dreaded virus, correct? So anyway, my buddy was telling me that his father-in-law, was hospitalized in terrible shape, and he got a phone call that said literally that your father-in-law has only hours to live. Hours to live, not days, weeks, months, but hours. The clock is literally ticking. And they decided, the doctors did at this particular hospital, to try hydroxychloroquine on him. And this was a couple of months ago. and they gave it to him. Now, keep in mind, they literally called the family and said, this man is going to be dead in a few hours. They gave him the hydroxychloroquine, and guess what happened? He turned around. He not only did not die, but he began to rebound and was not put on a respirator. He was heading that way. Probably if he'd have been in better shape, he might have gone on a respirator, as I understand it. He had one of these respirator-type masks, but not a real respirator, because they, quite frankly, didn't think it would make a difference at this point. But the hydroxychloroquine, whether it was the miracle drug, whether God touched the man, I don't know. All I know is, and I believe my friend completely, that they gave his father-in-law this drug, and within hours of being basically called that he would die, he actually turned the corner. Now, the good news, there's good news and bad news, I suppose, because the gentleman is 91, that he is still alive. He's doing somewhat better, but the pounding he took from the virus has basically put him in a perpetual kind of state of danger, because his body is so weakened. And let's face it, 91-year-olds just don't snap back. Anyway, I've heard other stories about like this on the news, but this is one that I heard about personally, and I absolutely believe it. But that didn't stop Miss Pelosi. Pelosi said, I would rather now keep in mind, this is a woman who's praying for Trump, right? I'm sure she's praying that this pill keeps the Donald from getting the disease. You believe that? But she said, I would rather he not, talking about President Trump, be taking something that has not been approved by scientists, especially in his age group and in his, shall we say, weight group. What is it? What is morbidly obese, they say? So she's calling the President Trump morbidly obese. She said, so I think that it's not a good idea. Well, first of all, I think she's worried that it might actually work. When they heard that his valet had the COVID disease or virus, do you really believe that they were like, man, I sure hope the president doesn't catch it? I don't know. I find that hard to believe. But first of all, let me just tell you that this whole story that's out there, that what is it called? I get the names, but the hydroxychloroquine, I want to get it right, is not scientifically proved to have any effect on the virus, is simply a lie. There are multiple studies literally happening as we speak, and I can't think of his name, but that doctor that's always on Fox News, I'm not talking about Dr. Oz, I'm talking about their kind of specialist dude. He literally said multiple times that he firmly believes that his father, who I think is in his 90s as well, that his life was saved by this drug. And this guy's not a quack by any stretch, or he's highly respected. But there are multiple studies happening. I think Detroit is carrying on a big one on hydroxychloroquine. There are multiple ones in France. One of the biggest ones in France is showing signs that it actually does work. There's really no dispute that it has had some effect on some patients. I don't think that's really in dispute, except maybe on CNN. So all of this is Trump derangement syndrome. And what's really hurts me is the fact that there are potential drugs like this one and others that might actually help people, that they're bent out of shape. They put politics in the middle of it, and it should just be based on doctors. Let them try. If you're dying, what difference does it really make if they give you something that speeds your death by 2 days versus 3 days? I don't understand it. Like I say, my friend's father-in-law was literally told that he had hours to live when he was given that drug. But the other thing is, on CNN, now this interview with Pelosi was on Anderson Cooper, I do believe. Now, she's body shaming, right? She's sitting there talking, basically calling the president fat, and no one says a word. You remember when President Trump was called out during the debates in 2016 when he was said, well, you've called women fat pigs. And this is when, I've always been a fan of Donald Trump, but I grew even bigger when he looked squarely in the camera and told old Megan, he said, I didn't call all women fat pigs. I called Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig, and basically doubled down on it. So Trump, man, he has no political correctness about the Donald. And that's one of the reasons why some of us love the guy. But CNN is allowing Pelosi to body shame President Trump. And do you think they called her out? No, he just took it as a matter of fact. Trump said earlier in the day, talking about this presser he did with these restaurant owners, Trump said earlier in the day that he has been taking hydroxychloroquine, which is used to treat malaria, for the past week. And here's the thing let me talk about this really quick. And I'm not saying this is scientific proof, but it is interesting to look at. If you look at a map of Africa, there are some hot spots in Africa, but there are large portions of the biggest continent on earth that have virtually no virus cases. And I don't think it's coincidental, but it could, that some of those places are places that this drug has been used extensively to treat and prevent malaria. And maybe there's a correlation. I'm not saying there is, but there could be. But so anyway, treat malaria. For the past week and a half, that's what Trump said he's been taking. One of his personal valets tested positive for the coronavirus. Now, keep in mind that it's not like, they want to portray this picture like Donald Trump, like snuck outside the White House over the hedges and like, hey man, are you holding some hydroxychloroquine? Give me a couple of tab, man, and let me try that stuff. He talked with his White House doctor. The doctor, personal physician of Donald Trump in the White House, actually said, yeah, let's try it to make it preventative. For it. What could it hurt? And he knows the president's medical history, so it's not like he consulted a witch doctor or some street vendor. He talked to you talk about believing in science, he talked to a scientist, essentially. Trump has repeatedly touted the drug, hydroxychloroquine, as a potential coronavirus cure or preventative measure that over the last 2 months, despite lack of evidence that is effective against the disease. See, this is the thing. Because Trump said it was potentially good, then it gotta be bad. I mean, that Trump derangement syndrome, man, it's unbelievable. As I've been telling you, Trump derangement syndrome is so bad that if President Trump was seen walking on the reflection pool there at the Washington Monument, the headline in the New York Times would be, Trump can't swim. I mean, so it doesn't matter. He probably would have been better off not mentioning the drug, and probably more people have been treated with it. But they are being treated with it, so it's a lie. And the other thing they talk about is how he talks about this all the time. Well, they talk about a vaccine all the time. They were talking about it yesterday, and I can't remember the company, but it's supposedly promising, not knocking it whatsoever. Their stock went through the roof, so probably some insider trading with some of them senators up there is what shot that up. But the vaccine is still, if ever, months away, if ever. And they talk about it like it's the panacea of our time. But Trump said on Monday, when he was asked about the evidence of hydroxychloroquine, he said, here's my evidence. I get a lot of positive calls about it. So far, I seem to be okay. So he's not saying that he personally read some scientific study. But did I mention the fact that the White House doctor said it was okay for him to take it? I mean, they kind of leave that part out, interestingly enough. But Senate Minority Leader, so, we heard from Nancy, so we got to hear from the Chuckster. Senate Minority Leader, and pray to God. You want to pray for something? Pray that he stays Minority Leader and doesn't become Majority Leader. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer also called Trump's decision to take hydroxychloroquine reckless. So, reckless from this guy. Have you seen this? We got a timeline on the coronavirus. I've posted it before, but it bears reposting, so to speak. Talk about reckless. Look at this. On January 31st of this year, Trump did the China travel ban, right? He basically cut off travel from China to and from China. February 5th, just a few days, a week basically after President Trump did this, what did Chucky Schumer say? He called Trump everything but a child of God throughout this whole racist, xenophobic, that this is just an example of how President Trump is racist. And as I've been telling you, President Trump is absolutely the worst racist that's ever occupied the White House. You people go, what? If you're new to the show, you won't know what I'm talking about. Hang on. The reason I say President Trump is the worst racist to ever occupy the White House is because he absolutely sucks at it. He's terrible at being a racist, so he's got to be the worst at it. But Schumer threw out the race card. But then on February 24th, basically a month after Trump banned travel, and oh, by the way, how many other countries did it after Trump? Trump was the first. He certainly wasn't the last. But Nancy Pelosi, talk about reckless. I don't know if, did you call her out for this? This is fully a month, the 24th, literally a month after President banned travel from China. Pelosi called Trump racist and said that everybody should just flock to Chinatown, eat out, have, party like it's 1999. She wasn't the only one. There were Democrats across the board saying that, oh, there's nothing to worry about here. Even Dr. Fauci was saying that. It seems like President Trump was the only one that took this serious. And certainly he took it serious at the earliest point. So I don't know about this reckless stuff. Reckless would be to vote for any of these Democrats. That would be reckless for sure. But Schumer went on to say, I know him saying he's taking it, talking about the president, whether he is or is not. So are you saying he's lying so that Trump just, what are you saying to him? That's him saying it is reckless, reckless, reckless. I guess if you repeat it 3 times, what happens then? Does Candyman come or something like that? I don't know, man. Repeat it 3 times. It gives people false hope, he says. This is Chuck Schumer. Has people avoid real medical attention and can actually cause them trouble. It's just dangerous what he did. So I guess he'd rather he say accusing the president of giving false hope. I guess the Democrats would rather you have no hope whatsoever. And this thing has people avoid real medical attention. Did I mention the fact that the White House doctors said it was okay? Did I tell you, I think I did, that this study on the hydroxychloroquine is going on all over the world and it's being given to people that are having real results? That the real lie here is to basically say that this is voodoo science and that Trump is just, just more unhinged. Well, I can tell you right now, if these guys are worried about Trump unhinged, let me tell you something I'm praying for and I'm working towards. I'm working towards Trump being unleashed. And that's what he will be when he wins in 2020 with all of our help out there. Trump unhinged, if they don't like unhinged Trump, they sure ain't going to like unleashed Trump. And it's coming, I'm hoping. The Food and Drug Administration warned last month that the drugs should not be taken outside of a hospital or clinical trial due to risk of heart rhythm problems. Okay, so there's some people who shouldn't take it. You should consult your physician. Clinical trial, so the president, in my opinion, he shows courage taking this drug. What if it doesn't work? What's the worst thing that could happen? He could die from it, right? So it's not like he knows what risk he's taking there, and it's his personal risk to take. And I think he's actually showing courage myself, and I'm praying that it works to keep him from getting the disease. And, Pelosi talking about somebody's vices, like have body shaming. Have you looked at Plastic Woman lately? Good Lord, man. Body shaming. And I don't even talk about the fact that most people think that Pelosi is a raging alcoholic. I didn't say, let's tell you, it's kind of out there. But, if you were to go on like CNN and go, Pelosi's a drunk, man, they would chop you to pieces. But calling the president fat and stupid and unhinged, no problem there. No double standard, only one standard. Trump is held to a standard. Pelosi, what standard is she being held to? That's why I say there is no real double standard. There's just one. An analysis of patients at Veterans Affairs hospitals across the country found that the death rates of people, I love how they leave stuff out. Guess what they're leaving out here? Found that the death rates of people treated with hydroxychloroquine were higher than those who did not receive the treatment. What they don't tell you is the people that are being given hydroxychloroquine are literally on their deathbed. It's not like they're giving it to people that test positive. They're doing some of that, but most of it's been given to people who, like my friend's father-in-law, were literally on their deathbed. Thank God it seems to have worked for him, but it wouldn't be unusual to have a higher death rate because these people are hours away from dying when they're giving it to most of them. The White House later Monday released a memo from the president's physician saying the two discussed the use of hydroxychloroquine and determined the potential benefit from treatment outweighed the relative risk. Well, have you seen President Trump's doctor? Isn't this him? I think we got a picture. There he is right there. No, I guess Gene Wilder, but from Young Frankenstein. But sorry about that, Billy Bob. Billy Bob tried to say that was President Trump's personal physician. Shame on you. He keeps me straight here. He has a pretty weird sense of humor. He's got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. But I could tell you, if you put that picture of Mr. Wilder back up there one more time. This is the portrayal of, is this not the portrayal of the doctor? This is how they really believe Trump doctor looks. And it's like, he's alive. It's alive. I mean, it is just crazy. Trump derangement syndrome, ladies and gentlemen, is real. Rest in peace, Gene Wilder. He was one terrific comedic actor. I miss him. Presidential physician Sean Connolly wrote, this is the actual doctor, a little bit slightly different. I don't know if he's as talented as Gene Wilder, but we'll see. The doctor, Sean Connolly, said, in consultation with our interagency partners and subject matter experiments around the country, I continue to monitor the myriad studies. So the guy's actually reading something besides the comics, investigating potential COVID-19 therapies. And I anticipate, this is President Trump's doctor, says, I anticipate employing the same shared medical decision-making based on the evidence at hand in the future. So they're using real science on this, contrary to what Pelosi is talking about it. But I guess it's not Greta approved. I mean, it's Dr. Connolly approved, but is it Greta approved? I mean, CNN, of all places, shouldn't have any room to talk. They have literally, I'm not talking about figure, I mean literally hired this young gal, and I kind of feel sorry for her in a way, but they've hired her as an expert on their coronavirus update panel. This gal she's not even in high school anymore. I mean, it is absolutely crazy, but I'm sure that Greta does not approve of the president taking hydroxychloroquine. You know, I don't know if she's been huffing some Lysol or not. She kind of looks like she's been on meth most of the time I see her. But anyway, I pick on her. I'm sorry. We'll move on. All right, let's talk about Mr. Pat Buchanan. I don't know how many of you know Pat. If you're my age or older, you definitely know Pat Buchanan ran for president at one point. He is pretty hardcore conservative. He is not a hardcore Trump supporter, but he certainly is glad that he's not a never Trumper by any stretch. I think he's an honest broker of his vision of the conservative movement. And he definitely has a lot of respect for what Donald Trump has done. He does not always agree with some of the personality issues, let's put it that way. But as far as the policies that President Trump has implemented, Pat Buchanan is on board with that. So I always find him an interesting read. I want to look at, this is from WND, which he's a columnist for. Will Americans submit to a second lockdown? That is a very interesting question indeed, Mr. Buchanan. On March 24th, President Donald Trump said he wanted the country and the economy opened up and just raring to go by Easter. Now, this was totally misconstrued at the time as saying we're going to open up by Easter. Donald Trump never said that. He said he hoped we would be open by Easter, that it would be a great sign, a very great symbolism if we could open up, you know, the rising, the resurrection of our economy and all that. And he was beat down and say, oh, he's being really short-sighted. He's trying to give us hope. It's like the mainstream media wants Donald Trump to walk up to the podium and just say, we're all going to die. And we are someday. I mean, but that's what they want. The presidents have always been, the good ones anyway, about instilling hope in the American people. Most great presidents, if not all of them, have a couple of things in common. At the core, they actually love America and believe in the greatness of the American people. I don't know that any of the Democrats that were running, certainly not Joe Biden, actually believe in the greatness of the American people. Now, there are some differences between some of them, but not much. But Joe Biden, man, I don't even know if he knows how to spell the greatness of the American people. But so Trump is definitely, I guess what Pat Buchanan is saying here, he's not personally saying it, but he's alluding to the reaction of President Trump, hoping we could open up on Easter as some kind of ravings of a lunatic. Trump is the demented man. And I think we got a picture of old Trump. There he is, Trump in a straitjacket with a MAGA hat on. Even that wouldn't stop Donald Trump, man. As I say, I am ready for Trump unleashed. If you think unhinged was trouble, wait till Trump is unleashed with our votes come November. What are you willing to do to vote again for Donald Trump? I know I'm willing to risk about anything. Easter came and went. Back to the article. Easter came and went, and Trump was mocked, you think, for being aspirational and unrealistic. Think about that. And Pat Buchanan is right about this. The man was literally mocked for trying to give the American people hope. That is a mockery in and of itself. Yet with Ascension Thursday at hand, this, if you don't, this is part of Easter celebration. 40 days after Easter, Ascension, I guess I'm not Catholic, so I don't totally get all this, but I know Mr. Buchanan, so I trust him. 40 days after Easter, the president seems to have been ahead of his time. So the president's trying to give us hope, believing in America, make America great again. But the Democratic mantra is hope sucks, man. Hope sucks. I mean, this is what the Democrats in 2020, their central mantra is America sucks. It's always sucked. It sucks for some more than others. And if you vote for us, we believe in equality. We'll make it suck for everybody equally. That really is the message coming out of the Democratic Party. But JMT's mantra is poverty sucks. I'm telling you right now, I've loved this meme from back in the 80s or 70s, I remember. Poverty sucks. It always has sucked. It's always been better to be rich. I mean, you snowflakes out there, I know this probably melts you, but if you get melted by me, you deserve to be melting. Listen to this. Poverty has always sucked. It's always sucked to be poor. And wealthy has always been better. And I don't see anything that is going to change that. You can hate on millionaires and billionaires. Of course, the billionaires are all Democrats, but you can hate on them all you want. It sucks to be poor. It's better whether you're in a pandemic or not. It's always better to be wealthy. Money don't buy you happiness, but it makes misery a lot more tolerable. This country as a whole, back to the article, the country as a whole is and has been opening up. Sunday's New York Times, and this is a very interesting, the way the New York Times plays with their headlines, and we know that they have a history of that. Sunday's New York Times reports that for weeks now, more than 2/3 of the states have been relaxing restrictions as Trump had urged. As I say, MAGA again. Make America great again. The reasons for this Times article, according to Mr. Buchanan, wariness with the lockdown and sheltering in place. I can feel that myself. A growing belief that the worst of the pandemic is behind us, and undeniably positive news from several fronts on the coronavirus war. Well, let me just say something I just popped in my head as I was reading that for about the third time. I want to say, as far as this wariness of shutdown, I got to express some gratitude here. I am really grateful that I had the outlet of this show during this time, because I wasn't going fishing up until recently. I was basically practicing the lockdown to stay at home and mainly coming into town to do this show. And a lot of you have thanked me for it, and you're most welcome. And I appreciate our ever-growing audience and all the comments you make out there on Facebook channel, whatever Facebook network you're listening to. Please keep responding. I'll keep coming back at you. But our show is growing on a daily basis. We're on America's Voice News now. You can download the free app. There's an Android and iPhone. There's Apple TV, Fire Stick, Roku. We're universal now, going universal on channel 219, the Dish Network. And we're on the Pluto channel. So we're throughout the solar system as well. And I really am grateful for all the great comments that people have been making and thanking me for doing the show. It has been a blessing to me to be able to vent as well. So if you need to do some of that venting, vent back and forth. We'll go back and forth a little bit. But let me just make this point here too. It says a growing belief that the worst of the pandemic is behind us. Well, what if it's not? What if it's not behind us? What if the Democrats are right that we are going to have a rebound of the virus come the fall? I'm telling you, they are praying for that. The best case scenario for Joe Biden, we're going to talk more about him in a minute, to win would be for the economy to maybe start moving, then the virus hit hard and everything sink right before November. That they've been praying for that before the virus. So to accuse them of that during the virus is not a long stretch, and it is very fair, because the Democrats have been verbally saying they wanted a recession because they thought the economy was the only thing that could save Trump and conversely take him down. But back to this, what if the pandemic, the worst, is not over? So what? And I don't mean that lightly. I know that means people will die, but we have to, we're all going to die someday. We have to make a decision whether we're going to be a nation that was built on courage, which we are, and are we willing to pay the price for freedom today? Because the freedom has always come with a price. So what if it is worse? Does that mean we just, hunker in the corner and wait to die? Or do we face it boldly, the challenges this country faces, like we always have? And I'm not saying don't take the virus serious. I'm saying it might be our challenge. Every generation, just about, at least every other one, it seems like, has had some type of challenge. This might just be ours. But back to this article. New cases in U.S. slow, ran the New York Times headline. This is how they play with the headline. So new cases in U.S. slow. They didn't want to print that. Adding that the cautionary warning posing risk of complacency. So there's a risk of complacency of the virus. But here, so I looked up the word complacency because I am concerned greatly about complacency, but not maybe where you might think. But let's listen to the definition because words matter. Complacency, a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. You know where I'm worried about complacency? I'm worried about complacency when it comes to our U.S. Constitution. We're in a post-constitutional age. One of the silver linings that I'm hoping will come out of this virus is that maybe, and I'm seeing some glimmers of it. I mean, who would have ever thought that the heroes of today might be barbers and beauticians and gym owners and that kind of thing? I'm seeing some glimmers of hope, some slivers of silver lining that people are getting truly woke to what is at stake here and has been for decades. And this is just, the pandemic has just exposed it. Like a lot of things, it's exposed. But one of them it has is how far we have strayed from the Constitution. And the complacency literally meant that we said, okay, we'll give up our freedom. We'll give up our freedom for a little security. Remember what old Ben said, people who do that will end up with neither. And that is as true today as it ever has been. So I'm worried about complacency when it comes to the Constitution. Clearly the opening, back to Pat's article here, clearly the opening in many states has been driven by popular protests and public demand. Crowds have ignored social distancing to demonstrate for an end to the shutdown. Now, I can tell you, if you're wearing a MAGA hat and you're not being socially distanced, they will put you on CNN, that's for sure. Protesters have refused to wear masks and engage in the time-honored practice since the 60s of civil defiance and disobedience. Like that's a bad thing, and I don't think that's what Pat's saying at all. But let me remind you, our country was founded on civil defiance and disobedience. That's how we became the great nation that we are, not from just listening to authority and waiting on them to tell us what to do. The protesters, according to Pat, seem to be saying we deplore the losses and now the risk, but we cannot live our lives behind closed doors in our homes until the elites tell us, as though we are children, when we may go out into the yard. And the congregation said, amen, Pat. I couldn't have said that any better myself, man. He really is on fire there. And he goes on to say, hence the next question we're all likely to confront. And this is what the Democrats, I'm telling you, they are literally, if Nancy Pelosi is praying for anything, it is this right here. If there is a sudden resurgence of the coronavirus, a second wave, and the immediate elite and blue state governors demand a new shutdown. They want us to you know how long the shutdown, they want the shutdown to last? Till Wednesday, the day after the Tuesday election in November. That's what they want. A new closure of beaches. I mean, think about that. And how crazy has it gotten out there when in California, they have virtually said that you can walk on the beach in the wet sand, but you can't walk in the dry sand. Based on what? And de Blasio has come out and said officially that if you go swimming in any of the beaches in New York, they're going to come out and arrest you. So what are they going to do? Put police officers in frog suits to go out and arrest people who are swimming? Do you really think the police want to do that? Is that the best use of your time? You aren't free to swim? I mean, good Lord, man. That's how far I'm telling you, we're in a post-constitutional age. We got to wake up. But it says closure of beaches, parks, shops, restaurants, and churches. Will the people of this republic comply with these demands or defy them? And that is a very interesting point, interesting question. It remains to be seen. We are starting to defy some of these draconian issues, some of these unconstitutional issues across the country. And I think that is a very good sign. But Pat brings an interesting question. If in fact the virus comes back in a big way come the fall, and there's going to be a huge push to shut us down again for some legitimate reasons, quite a few political reasons, and some just plain hysteria, how are we, the public, going to react to that? And he says the political divide has already begun to appear. Among those making the case for ending the shutdown and reopening, he talks about Ron DeSantis and Georgia. I want to skip forward to it. He said the proponents of a second shutdown will be liberal governors and mayors, the mainstream media, and the Nancy Pelosi wing of Congress. As I say, they are absolutely praying for this. He says ultimately the people will decide when this shutdown ends, and when a plurality so concludes, the elites will be swept away. And that he's right about one thing. That is our history. That is our great history of the United States. When the people have had enough, they have let the leaders know in no uncertain times that enough is enough. Our country was founded that way, and we have rebounded multiple times by the will of the people. I'm still suspect whether we have that will again or not. I'm always hopeful. I'm not without hope. But will it repeat? Will we absolutely stand up? Because I think we're at that risk. And I've been telling you all along, ladies and gentlemen, you have to assess your own risk. I'm not telling you, let me make this very clear. I'm not telling you as an individual that you don't need to go out, wear a mask, all that stuff. I'm saying you need to assess your risk to you and your family. Certainly, if you had, like I had last year, my mom died at 98 years old. I took care of her for the last about decade of her life. That, if she were still alive right now, I'd have to rethink a lot of things that I do, because I'd be afraid that I'd be bringing the virus back to her. So every situation is different. I'm not saying that. I'm saying assess your own personal risk. Don't let the governor or the mayor tell you what is your risk level. You assess it yourself. Be a rugged individualist. That's what formed this country. Have the courage to be free. And I say, I'm not telling you to, stick your thumb or your nose out at the virus. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to have the courage to be free. Patrick Henry told us this, and I put this meme up all the time, but I think it's as viable today and important today as it ever was. When he talks about give me liberty and give me death, what a lot of people miss is he's talking about simply existing is not enough. That if he can't be a free, rugged individual, a free person in a free nation, he'd rather be dead. And we seem to have forgotten that. We used to be a nation that didn't have fear. That, we had it, but we looked it in the face. We faced it with courage. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is staring fear in the face and getting your job done. Because without fear, if you're totally without fear, you're probably insane. So courage is facing your fear. And we've faced our fears many, many times. Remember, there were Democrats who used to say we had nothing to fear but fear itself. Now they're like, body shaming President Trump and saying run for the hills while they're eating ice cream at their home. That kind of thing. I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi. But I say this all the time. It's kind of one of my axioms. And this kind of sums up this particular article. We better be willing to man the political ramparts. I'm not even talking about voting for President Trump. That is a given. We need to reelect Donald Trump. It's not a given that he will be reelected, but we need to do what we need to do. But we need to stand up right now to these little Napoleons that are sprung up all over the country and man the political ramparts against them. Because if we don't man the political ones, trust me on this, we're going to have to man the real ones again. And to save our nation, to have our freedom, we've got to pay that price of liberty, the blood of patriots, as Thomas Jefferson was saying. And I don't want to see that happen, because we have already paid that price. That price, the real ramparts were manned for us. We don't need to pay that again, although to keep it, we may have to. And before now and then, we better man the political ones. All right, we only got a few minutes left. I want to get into Joe Biden. It's laughable. It kind of makes you want to cry a little bit. if you care about old people. And it's sad. It's sad for Joe, his family. It's sad for people that, may want to see a Democrat legitimately in the White House. I'm not one of them. But this guy, I don't see how you can vote for the man. I'm going to play a very quick snippet. And what this is about is last week, Joe, he's been living in his basement. What did President Trump call him? Puxatawny Phil and hiding Biden. He did this like 10-minute, we're only going to play a small clip, virtual reality tour, I suppose, campaign event, broadcast primarily to Tampa. Of course, it's all over the web, so anyone can see it. And it had a lot of prominent Florida Democrats like Charlie Crist and all these coming out for Biden. Well, the whole thing was a total fiasco. We're going to show the opening scene of it where Biden and believe me, this is the actual video. This has not been altered. But during later parts of the video, let's play this and we'll talk about the rest in a minute. Check this out. This is the start, and it only got worse from here.
Please welcome Vice President Joe Biden.
Introduce me. Am I on?
I had to warn my producer, man, about that video because I know he would have thought he made some kind of mistake on it. That's the start. That was the start of. Now, even before that, there were some starts where they had people live, supposedly like Charlie Crist and other prominent Florida political figures in the Tampa area Democrats, and it was just god awful. Now, they have taken the video down from Joe Biden's website, so you have to kind of search for it. But the original video is still out there, about 10 minutes long. Not only did Biden come out, I mean, what was that thing with the glasses, wearing them anywhere? And how do it look like something out of some sci-fi? And they've had months to get his basement ready, and they can't even do as good a job as what me and Billy Bob and my good producer Gabe, my soon-to-be crazy rich Asian friend Gabe, we're able to put together here. Biden and them, they need to hire us. They need to hire Gabe to go do it, but he's probably above what they could handle. But anyway, in this video, you got to check out the real one. I can't play the whole 10-minute video, but there's geese in the background. Apparently, he's got a pond on his property, and the geese are just honking, honking, honking. Then there's a part where a Secret Service guy comes in behind him and is like looking around and all that kind of. It's just comical, man. And the bloopers within the video itself of them trying to zoom people in and out, it's just. It's unbelievable that they don't have better technology than this. It's always a challenge to do any of these live things, but I mean, they apparently have no clue, and probably that's why Biden hired him. Former Vice President Biden already played that. So anyway, we'll move along. Here's what Biden said. He said, the pandemic has unleashed familiar forces, talking about Trump, of hate, fear, and xenophobia that have always flames and fans. The flames have always existed in our society, but with this president, talking about Trump, they brought with it a new rash of racist messages, verbal, physical attacks, and other acts of hate. So this is coming from a guy in Joe Biden. Keep in mind, and we could play this video again in the future, but Joe Biden literally opened up his campaign on a lie. He was talking about the Charlottesville. He tried to open it up in Charlottesville, and the good people in Charlottesville didn't want any part of it. But do you remember the famous thing that Trump supposedly said, and he did say it, but totally out of context, where he said there's good people on both sides? What he was talking about was not white supremacist Nazis and Antifa. That's what the media made it sound like. If you go back and listen to the entire clip or read the transcript, within seconds of President Trump saying there are good people on both sides, who he was talking about before that is the people who were there about the issue of taking down Robert E. Lee's statue or not. He said there's good people on both sides of that issue. And then he went straight into saying criticisms of white nationalists, Nazis. I don't even think he mentioned Antifa. So he attacked white nationalism. The press knows that statement that they've been portraying as racist is a lie. Joe Biden, I don't know if he knows it, but certainly his campaign people knew it was a lie, yet they chose to literally, the first statements coming out of Joe Biden's mouth declaring his candidacy for president were an absolute lie. So I'm not surprised that it's only gone downhill from there. But if you want a comedy routine, look at the original not the one on Biden's website, but the original. Do a little searching. Original video of Joe Biden. It is something straight out of Saturday Night Live. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, and share it with others. Our audience is growing daily. Feel free to comment on it. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'll keep praying for your family. You keep praying for mine. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.